Hi, welcome back, and today I'm going to be reading Chasing Lincoln's Killer by James L. Swanson, Chapter 3. Less than a mile away, near the White House, all was quiet at the home of the Secretary of the State, William H. Seward. Confined to his bed since a terrible carriage accident the week before Seward drifted out of consciousness. The night of the accident, Seward's face swelled so badly that his children could barely recognize him, and the blood was pouring through his nose and almost suffocated him. Seward's doctors warned the family to keep him under constant watch. 4 days after the carriage accident, Lincoln walked from the White House to Seward's big brick mansion nearby to check on Seward. The accident worried Lincoln. Carriage accidents were serious in wartime. Washington and could prove deadly. The sight of Seward, alive if not well, relieved Lincoln. During the war, Lincoln and Seward became good friends and trusted confidants. After talking quietly for an hour, Lincoln left and never saw Seward again. Now, on April 14th, Fancy Seward watched over her father and listened at the sights and sounds of the celebrations on the street. A torchlight parade marched from the White House. A band played patriotic songs. Fanny was a tall and slender, brown-haired girl, educated in literature and politics, and at age 20, her father's favorite. A devoted and talented writer with an eye for detail, her secret diary, which she began at 14, detailed her observations and encounters with the political, military, and the diplomatic elite. Outside of the mansion, in the shadows, Lewis Powell and David Harold were keeping the Seward house under close watch. The street was quiet. They saw no guards in front of the door or anywhere on the street. The newspaper reported Seward's carriage accident and described the serious injuries that he had suffered, noting that he was recovering at home, bedridden. That made Seward, of all Lincoln's cabinet officers, Booth's most appealing target of the night. The other cabinet officers could be anywhere. Dinner parties, traveling. It would be difficult to attract. Seward, helplessly lying on the bed, was sure to be home when the assassins arrived. Booth issued simple instructions to his henchmen: invade the house, locate the Secretary of State bedroom, and kill the defenseless victim with a pistol fire and, necessary, a knife. This was a difficult mission even for a man like Powell. He battle-handed and extremely strong ex-confident soldier. Powell had 3 problems. First, how was he going to enter the house? The door surely locked. He would just have to ring the bell. If someone answered, he could just shoot or slash his way in. That might attract attention of pedestrians or awaken occupants of the house to defend themselves. Dictation, not brute force, was key. They came up with a brilliant plan. Powell would pretend he was a messenger delivering important medicine from Seward's doctor. To make his story more believable, Powell carried a small package wrapped in paper and tied with string. Powell's second problem was that he would have to track down the Secretary Seward himself, and not just deliver the package to a servant or nurse. How would he find him in the large 3-story mansion? Powell's third challenge: how many people were in the house? Seward might be attended by nurses, doctors, servants, maids, family members, and guards. There were certainly several people there, perhaps up to a dozen. Powell, fiercely loyal to Booth, ignored the risk and agreed to proceed with the plan. David Harold also went along, as long as he did not have to kill anybody and he could wait for Powell outside holding their horses. From the showers, Powell and Harold watched Seward's doctors leave. The house was quiet now. They watched the gas lights go dim in several rooms indicating that the occupants were settling in for the night. Powell handed his horse to Harold and walked across the street to the secretary's front door, hearing the bell. Harold scanned up and down the block as he stood to watch, keeping their horses ready. On the first floor, a black servant named William Bell hurried to answer the door. Late-night callers, mostly messengers, were not unusual. There was no reason why a servant should not open that door. Before him stood a tall, attractive, muscular man, well-dressed in fine leather boots, black pants, jacket, and hat. He was holding a small package in his hands, and dissipation had worked. Nothing about Powell's appearance raised suspicion in William Bell. He greeted Powell and asked him politely how he could help the visitor. Powell explained his mission. He was a messenger with medication from Seward's doctor. That sounded reasonable. The servant reasoned with the doctor, must have prescribed some medicine, and ordered it to be delivered to the Seward immediately. Powell stepped into the hall and closed the door behind him. Bell reached to accept the package. No, Powell said. The doctor, he said, to deliver it personally to the Secretary of State and instruct him how to take the medication. The servant said, I will deliver it up to myself. Powell insisted, I must go up. He must see the secretary personally. Those were his instructions. For 5 minutes, the assassin and the servant argued whether Powell would leave the medication with Bell. I must go up, he repeated. I must go up. Powell inched towards the staircase, backing Bell up to the landing. The servant was in grave danger now. Powell was almost out of patience. Powell lifted a foot to the first step, then another to the second. Bell chattered on, but Powell kept pounding up the stairs slowly, his boots striking the steps with dull thuds that echoed the floors above. Luckily for Bell, he did not try to block Powell's path. Instead, he climbed the stairs with him. At the top of the staircase, Seward's son Frederick confronted Bell and the stranger. Powell did not know it, but Frederick only stood a few feet away from the closed door in the room where Secretary Seward lay. The stranger explained his mission again. Frederick explained that his father was asleep and he would take the delivery of medicine for him. Again, Powell refused, arguing that he might see the secretary. Incredibly, Powell, thanks to a little package that showed up as a prop, had still not created suspicion about his true intentions. To Frederick, it seemed like a stupid and stubborn messenger. From the inside her father's bedroom, Fanny Seward sensed someone was in the hall. She hurried to the door and opened it a little to shield her father from the bright gaslight from the hall. She saw her brother and a tall stranger in a hat and overcoat. She whispered, Fred, Father is awake now. She knew in an instant she had done the wrong. Powell leaned forward and tried to peek into the dark room, but Fanny held the door closed, and the assassin was not able to see the target. He stared at Fanny in a harsh, impatient tone and demanded, Is the secretary asleep? Then Fanny made a terrible mistake. She glanced back into the room in the direction of her father and replied, Almost. Frederick Seward grabbed the door and shut it quickly. It was too late. Innocently, Fanny had given Powell the information he desperately needed. Secretary of State William H. Seward was in that room, lying helpless in bed, defended by no one. Powell probably assumed, but a frail-looking good girl. Powell did not know how the Sergeant Robinson was in the bedroom, too. Robinson, a wounded veteran, was serving in the Army, nurse keeping a watch over Seward's record. Frederick, still arguing with Powell, gave him an order. Surrender the medicine or I'll take it up to the doctor. Powell glared, still refusing to give up his package. He finally presented it to give up. He stuffed the package into his pocket, turned around and started to walk down the stairs. He did not remove his hand from his pocket. William Bell, walking down ahead of Powell, looked at the front door, through which few moments he would take the ill-mannered visitor into the street. At the top of the stairs, Frederick Seward, satisfied turning away from an annoying pest, took his eyes off of Powell, and headed for his room. In an instant, Powell turned around and rushed up the stairs before Frederick could turn around. Powell stood behind him. Seward whirled around, but it was too late. Powell was pointing a revolver at him, the muzzle inches away from his face. Another moment, a .36 caliber bullet would explode in his face, and the hot black powder would at such close range only kill him in an instant, but also burn his flesh into a hideous black. Powell was staring into Frederick's eyes and squeezed the trigger. The hammer fell, struck into the percussion cap. Seward had no time to move. He knew he was dead. Then he heard a metal click. Misfire. The gun had not fired off its round. Frederick was still alive, but Powell was unlike his master. Booth had 5 more rounds in his revolver. He could draw the hammer back in his thumb and take another shot. Then Powell made a mistake that jeopardized the mission. Instead of trying to fire again, Powell raised the pistol high in the air and brought down a crushing blow to Frederick's head. He hit him so hard that he broke the pistol, jamming it in the cylinder and making it impossible to fire the weapon again. In a fury, using all his strength, Powell clubbed Frederick Seward with the barrel of the broken revolver. William Bell ran down the stairs into the street, shouting, "Murder!" Watching from across the street, nervous Daredevil knew that was not a part of the plan. Fanny was unaware of the chaos on the other side of the door. She sat in the chair beside her father. She heard the sounds of Frederick being beaten and wounded. The noise in the hallway. As soon as Sergeant Robinson opened the door, Fanny saw a horrible sight. Her brother's face, wild-eyed, covered in blood. Powell moved quickly, and he shoved Frederick aside and then struck Sergeant Robinson with the forehead with the knife, stunning to him with the blow. The assassin pushed past the stumbling sergeant and went to the frail girl blocking his path. He ran to the secretary Seward's belt, clutching the knife in his right hand and the pistol in his left. Near darkness, Fanny raced to Powell to her father's bed, trying to vain throw the slender body between the huge assassin and her helpless father. The assassin reached for the bed and pounced on Seward. "Don't kill him," she shouted. Seward awoke, trying weakly to raise himself. He saw Fanny and glimpsed at Powell's unforgettable, rugged face and burning eyes. The assassin pushed the secretary's chest, pinning him to the bed. Powell used every ounce of his strength and landed the tremendous blow in the dark. Missed twice. Determined not to miss again, he delivered a third mighty blow and aimed at Seward's throat. The agonized groan came from the bed, and Powell had finally hit his target. The blade slashed open Seward's cheek viciously, but the skin hung from a flap, exposing his teeth and a fractured jawbone. His cheek resembled a fish gill. Seward choked on the warm, metallic-tasting blood that spurted from his mouth and poured down his throat. Across the room, Sergeant Robinson raised his senselessness. He would fight to death before he would allow the assassin to murder the secretary and Miss Fanny. He charged into Powell. In an instant, the two battle-hardened Civil War veterans grappled the death struggle. Powell's strength surprised Robinson. He could barely hold on to him as Powell Seward again. Fanny screamed in the endless howling, terrifying wail that broke her brother Augustus, who was sleeping in a room nearby. She opened a window and screamed into the street below. That was enough to frighten David Harold into feeling. He kicked the horse and fled, abandoning Lewis Powell. Powell kept fighting. Powell's experience as a soldier would not permit one man and a screaming girl to scare him off. August Stewart, dressed in a nightskirt, raced to his father's room in the shadow of the two men fighting. Confused at the thought his father had become delirious in the male nurse, Sergeant Robinson was trying to restrain him. As soon as he grabbed the shadowy figure, he thought his father knew about it or something else. Now the two men and Powell fought harder, slashing wildly into the knife. He stabbed Robinson twice in the shoulder, deeply to the bone. Robinson ignored the wounds and kept fighting. The surrogate and the Augustins wrestled Powell into the hall in the bright glass light. Powell and Augustins, their faces inches apart, fixed their eyes on each other. Powell spoke. In an intense, calm voice, the assassin confided to Augustin, as though trying to persuade him, the strangest thing. I'm mad. I'm mad. Powell wound his arm, Robinson's neck in a chokehold, and the surrogate braced himself for a knife that was sure to follow at any moment. Then, in a curious act of mercy, Powell let him go, and instead of stabbing him again, he hit him with his fist. Powell fled down the stairs into the street, his eyes searching desperately for David Harold. He found nothing more than his lone horse, and Powell tossed his knife to the ground, mounted his horse, and instead of galloping into the night, calmly trotted away. William Bell, waving his arms into the street, persuaded Powell on foot for a few blocks away, yelling all the way. Unstable to keep up with the horse, he returned to Seward's house. Fanny ran back into her father's room only to find the bed empty. She saw what she thought no more was a pile of discarded bed sheets on the floor, but it was her father, in a bloody heap. To save his own life, he had rolled out of bed during the attack and crashed to the floor, hoping to escape Powell's reach in the dark room. Fanny slipped into a big puddle of blood and trembled into the gas floor beside her father and looked ghastly, white and very thin. And that made her scream mistakenly, "Oh my God, my father's dead!" Surrogate Robinson ignored his own wounds and lifted injured Seward from the floor and laid him tenderly in his bed. Seward opened his eyes and looked terrified at his daughter. An unimaginable pain spit out blood from his mouth and whispered, "I am not dead. Send a doctor. Send the police close to the house." That's the end of the chapter. Sorry for my stuttering. I'm really bad at this. Okay, goodbye.